The bedroom was dark, abandoned, and suffocating. A single flickering bulb cast intermittent shadows across cracked walls, struggling to hold back the swallowing darkness. Dust hung thick in the stale air, and the faint smell of mildew mingled with the iron-like tang of rust from the bed frame. At the far end of the room stood an old, tall mirror leaning against the wall, its surface marred with jagged cracks that ran like dried veins. The mirror seemed to absorb the light, making the corners of the room appear deeper, darker, as if the shadows themselves were alive. A close-up of the dusty mirror frame revealed every imperfection with chilling clarity. Deep cracks etched into the wood, splintered and uneven, looked like veins carrying some ancient dark energy. The dust clung stubbornly to these ridges, highlighting the depth of the decay. It was a frame that had witnessed decades, perhaps centuries, of forgotten horrors. The room remained silent, the faint hum of the flickering bulb the only sound. Outside, moonlight barely touched the mirror's glass, leaving it cold and opaque, reflecting nothing but shadows. A hand reached out slowly, trembling, fingers brushing against the mirror's surface. Where the skin met glass, a faint fog appeared, curling and twisting under the touch, as if the mirror itself exhaled. The glass was unnaturally warm, almost alive, distorting the faint reflections with subtle waves, a heat haze that made the edges of reality blur. From the bed, a point-of-view shot captured the mirror standing in darkness, its presence oppressive, barely visible yet impossible to ignore. Fog shifted and moved across the glass as though breathing, rising and falling in slow, deliberate motions. And then, something impossible happened. The reflection lagged behind reality by a fraction of a second. A flicker, a delay so subtle it was almost dismissible, yet deeply unsettling. Eyes met the reflection, wide with fear in the low light. The reflection blinked late, and when it did, a smile formed, unnatural, slow, and knowing, something the real face would never dare. The room's shadows deepened as the mirror seemed to darken itself, standing apart from the surrounding gloom. Closer now, the glass vibrated slightly, creating ripples across its surface. A foggy handprint appeared from inside the mirror, pressed flat as though someone or something was trapped behind the glass. The figure on the other side was patient, calculating. Every heartbeat was visible in the pulse of fog, a visual echo of heavy, irregular breathing. Then scratches appeared, tiny but deliberate, clawing across the surface from within. Extreme close-ups captured fingernails dragging across glass, sparks of light dancing in unnatural patterns. A dark silhouette loomed behind the mirror, just beyond comprehension. Whispering mouths formed inside the reflection, lips moving out of sync with words that never reached the ears. Suddenly, a lamp switched on, and the mirror bulged outward as if trying to escape the wall itself. The surface stretched like skin, a body pressing from inside, face pressed flat with no eyes, no mouth, just the horrifying impression of a presence desperate to be free. The character screamed, but the reflection remained calm, smiling with terrible serenity. The scene shifted to the hallway. The character ran, breath ragged, heart hammering, leaving the mirror's room behind in darkness. A fleeting glimpse of the landlord's face appeared, half-lit, expression cold and knowing as though aware of every shadow, every secret. Back in the room, the mirror was covered with a white sheet, yet tension remained palpable. The fabric rose and fell like a chest, subtle movements hinting at life beneath, and pressing shapes suggested a skull, its hollow eyes staring through the thin cloth. A phone camera trembled in shaky POV, capturing the scene as the sheet moved unnaturally. The screen showed an uncovered mirror, though the real one remained covered. On the screen, the reflection smiled impossibly wide. Standing while the real body lay inert on the bed, the phone slipped from shaking hands, slow-motion panic capturing the screen cracking against the floor. Shadows in the room bent toward the mirror, light refusing to reflect correctly, as if the glass had its own gravity. Eyes sleepless with dark circles stared all night, feeding the mirror's growing hunger. The mirror's voice emerged through the character's own mouth, speaking truths and lies with distorted cadence. The glass rippled like liquid, reflections warping and twisting, hands raised independently from the reflection, perfectly aligned with the real hands only in fleeting moments, then breaking apart to taunt. A vertical crack split the center of the mirror, two reflections diverging, each one breathing with its own rhythm. Heartbeats doubled in sync with the pulsing cracks. The crack in the mirror grew slowly, spreading like a spider's web across the glass. Human silhouettes seemed trapped within its layers, pressing and struggling against the invisible surface. Each movement was slow, agonizing, like time itself had thickened behind the glass. The character's own reflection raised a hand independently, fingers stretching toward reality. Panic surged. The reflection's eyes were no longer human. They were hollow, glowing faintly with something ancient, hungry and patient. Suddenly the mirror exploded. Shards flew outward, frozen in midair, suspended as if gravity had abandoned them. Hands reached through the bee. Broken glass pulling the character forward. Everything flipped. The world twisted upside down, motion blurred, and the air grew suffocating. Inside the mirror, walls of cold, unfeeling glass surrounded the character. Silence pressed in, and every breath echoed like a scream in an empty cathedral. Pressed flat against the surface, mouth open but voiceless, the character felt the presence behind the glass drawing nearer, its satisfaction palpable. Outside, the real body stood motionless in the room, possessed yet calm, its neck stretched unnaturally as it inhaled deeply, a grotesque parody of life. The broken mirror lay on the floor, shards glittering like black ice, completely still. Days later, sunlight entered the empty room, soft and oblivious, revealing nothing but dust and silence. New tenants arrived, unaware. The old mirror was gone, replaced by a pristine one, reflecting the room as if nothing had ever happened. Yet late at night, fog appeared slowly on the glass, faint breathing marks re-emerged, subtle but unmistakable, hands pressed desperately from inside the new mirror, clawing at the surface, reaching for the living. The final shot lingered from inside the mirror, the sound of ragged, fading breaths echoing, and then darkness swallowed everything. The room, quiet and innocent in daylight, hid the horrors that still lingered behind every reflection, waiting for the next unwary soul to look too closely.